Twitter and go ahead and tweet some of your favorite learnings from this session, and also make sure that you hashtag it, #designertrack, along with hashtag
Den Startup Week.
Awesome.
A couple other things. Tonight there is the opening night party. It's an interactive game show from our friends in San Francisco, Refresh Events, and it's going to be really cool, and we want you all to attend and tell everybody about it. But it's basically like we all play a game show together, and it's going to be one of the few times you can go into breakout rooms and meet strangers and play games and have fun. So please sign up for that, and you have to be in the room by 6:05 Mountain Time. Anyone can come.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and
The
get
Clubhouse.
Oh yes, and make sure that you go to the Designer Track Virtual Clubhouse. You can find it on the schedule. We're in the club. Right now, but you can go ahead and browse on your web browser, and it's really cool, super fun. We have some really fun surprises in there. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring up our first section, and we have Jami, Duffy, and Edwina Maben. And they're with Youth on Record. Youth on Record empowers Colorado's underserved youth to achieve their academic, artistic, and personal best by employing local professional artists as their educators. So let's go ahead and bring Jami and Edwina up to the stage.
Hi all, coming in hot from Youth on Record's recording studio. We are so excited to kick this off with all of you. I'm Jami Duffy. I've been the executive director of Youth on Record for over 10 years. And Youth on Record is a nonprofit organization. And I always say a nonprofit is a business. We just file our taxes differently. And our business has grown by over 1,000% in 10 years. We serve close to 2,000 young people in Denver metro area every year. And what we're really working to do is to employ professional local artists to help young people achieve their academic, artistic, and personal best. These are the folks we're all going to be counting on. These are the young people who are going to see us through to what's next and to help us build the story of this time. I have one of these young creatives with me today, and I am so excited to introduce you all and the world to Edwina. Edwina is a graduate of our fellowship program and is a graduate of our Fem-Powered program. She's going to talk to us today about the power of personal narrative, the power of personal story. And again, thanks for kicking off today with us. Thanks for having us as the first session. Super excited to be here with all of you virtually. Thanks for making the time. So Edwina, talk to me a little bit about Fem-Powered and why it is so important in this moment to elevate the voices of young femmes.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all, or you meet you. So Fem-Powered is a music community by Youth on Record specifically for young female creatives. The space is purposely made to be a space that is comfortable, safe, and also a community at the bottom of it. But just for me personally, when I first joined Fem-Powered, the thing that I mainly took away was just being able to have like these new friendships where I was able to share my art without feeling like, you know, it needs to be perfect or it needs to be in a certain stage before I can present it to anyone. And I really value those friendships as an artist, and I continue to meet new people through it. So it's been a really positive aspect in my artistry recently. And I currently help Mona Magno, who runs Fem-Powered, come up with different workshop ideas. And we also just make sure to create that sense of, again, community and a space that is welcoming to returners and new people interested. Mm-hmm. As for why it's important right now to elevate young voices, I think as an artist, confidence is so key in everything you make. And if you are in a space that is inclusive and that is positive, even in terms of like, if you need constructive criticism, this space is open to that. And this space is ready to have those conversations. The name of this program is Fem-Powered, but yeah, that is Fem-Powered.
Yeah, I mean, Fem-Powered is a program where we are pairing young women, young femmes with female voices in the music industry. And, you know, I think when you look at Edwina, you can see the power of getting young people the kind of mentorship and access to the creative industries that allows them to do something like this, to be your first panelist on Denver Startup Week. So Edwina, you and I have talked a little bit about this, and I'm sure some of you can resonate with the fact that we're all in this time where we're feeling nervous in a lot of ways about the future. And I was telling Edwina that I was in a yoga class about 6 years ago, and we were all doing sort of this tree pose, this stability pose, and we were having a hard time being stable. And in the middle of that, everybody got really small and we contracted. And the yoga instructor said, well, what happens if you all expanded and took a deep breath and got as big as you could? And in that moment, everybody instantly stabilized. And so my question for you, I've taken that as a principle of running this business, of running the business of Youth on Record. How do we stabilize by expanding our sense of who we are? And by growing bigger and deeper into what our mission is on this planet. And so my question for you is, in this time of great insecurity, how have you grappled with the natural desire to want to contract, but also expanding who you are?
Yeah, definitely at the beginning of quarantine, I think I went more inward in that shrinking motion. You know, I am a student as well, and to have all my classes suddenly shift online, I kind of put myself in this weird little isolated self. I wasn't reaching out to as many people. The people that I normally see during the week, I wasn't seeing anymore. And instead of me being a little bit more mindful about how that might impact me, I think I just kind of let it go. And later, I definitely felt that like kind of loneliness sink back in because of that shrinking motion, I guess, within myself. As for expansion, though, I think later in quarantine, when I was maybe a little bit more used to it, I started some more habit building, specifically with my sleep schedule, or around my sleep schedule, just because that was one of the first things to drastically change for me personally after quarantine started. But I think an experience that probably showcases both is actually when I got hired to be a partner artist at Youth on Record. I had been interning with Youth on Record for about a year, starting last year. And every Wednesday, me and the program lead, Mona, would FaceTime and discuss planning for workshops, discuss what we want to intentionally bring into our next session. And this particular week, we had already had our Wednesday FaceTime, and she texted me and was like, hey, can we FaceTime on Friday as well? And part of me just immediately all of me got very, very nervous and just assumed that the internship was coming to an end, just because my mind had been hearing so much of like, this is closing, this is ending, this is stopping until further notice. And my mind immediately was just like, the whole day I was preparing myself to hear Mona say something along the lines of like, we're really sorry, but this is going to end early.
Yeah, just preparing for the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. But then when I actually got on the call, Mona offered me the partner artist position. And I immediately had this decision in my head of like, one, do I like completely spill all my feelings to Mona and tell her how stressed I was the whole day about this? Yeah. Or two, do I like, play it cool and be like, okay, I'll figure this out after the call, which is the route I took. But it wasn't necessarily getting that position that I would consider the expansion. It was that mindset of realizing how small I was thinking. And especially as a creative, like I love that my imagination also often allows me to see what is, not necessarily in front of me. It lets me see beyond. And so to realize how small I was thinking, it definitely kind of put some pressure on me to like, step up and realize that my mindset can affect a lot of what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, I love that story because as we're talking about storytelling today, there's also the story that we're telling ourselves about ourselves and what's possible in this moment. And so, Youth on Record has grown actually in the middle of coronavirus. And some of that, we're so blessed to be able to say that. And some of it really starts with that artist imaginative mind of saying, what is possible? What's the story we're telling ourselves? what's the story that we're telling ourselves about the world around us and the people around us, and how do we continue to expand? So I wish I could stay with you all day. I have one final question, then we have a treat for all of you, which is coming up in just a minute. And I just want to make a note. I know some people have some questions for us about protocols around coronavirus and keeping us safe. I'm happy to talk to all of you about all of the work that we've done. I know some people have questions about masks and why we're not wearing them right now. We take it very seriously, so would love to just get us all kind of back in the moment so that we can talk about the topic at hand, and then I'm happy to talk to all of you afterwards about that. So in this moment, I think that we have a tendency as a nation and as an adult to ask adults to be the experts, right? And part of Youth on Record's work is to empower the voices of our young creatives and young people to be a part of the conversation. And Edwina is part of that conversation today. And so I'm going to ask you a question that that only people who are considered experts in this field are being asked, but I'm really curious about your take of what is going on right now. What is the story of this moment? What's happening?
Mm-hmm. I think if I were to pick the title for the collective story right now, it would be a reminder that the future is not as predictable as we often think it is. I think we live in a space and time where we can plan for months ahead. I mean, even just thinking as a student, I plan for my semester months ahead. We plan for events half a year ahead. You know, we're so used to be able to have those tools, whether it's like phones, computers, that help us to look further into our calendar and pick a date and, you know, just be so comfortable being able to plan ahead. And to have this entire year happen, I think it was just a reminder that sometimes we maybe need to be thinking a little bit more present in order to stabilize our future events. Yeah, I think it's just a big reminder that, you know, as far as we have come as humans with technology and transportation and everything like that, we still will never truly be able to predict what will happen.
Yeah. You were telling me the other day that your generation being raised with all the tools and technology, it is very predictive. Like you feel like you can count on certain things. And in this moment, that's been taken away. What is that? What have you noticed about just the stories of your friends, the social emotional wellness? What has that done to young people?
I think, at least talking about me and my friends, I think the thing that hit us the most was just not being able to hang out. And like little things, you know, like even seeing people in school that I maybe even like saw in the hallway or something, and it was like a brief interaction. Like I missed those people and I didn't even interact with them that much. It's all been a bunch of little things, I think, more than like some sort of big event that we missed. I think it's just been a series of, you know, things that used to seem kind of thoughtless in a way, like, oh, let's just hang out today, let's go do this next week, that is suddenly not as available. And I think it's been little things maybe building up to that feeling.
Yeah. The final question I have for you is, what is the role of art in telling this story? I mean, I know for me, and what we believe at Youth on Record is that artists are culture bearers. They are going to tell the story of this time. They have told the story of every time before this, and we are going to look back at the art that was created in this moment. And that is going to be part of our record keeping. How are you keeping the record of this time? I know you're going to share with us a little bit, but how are you keeping the record of this story through your art?
Yeah, I mean, I think before it was even songwriting, it was just journaling and talking about what I was experiencing day by day. And as time went on, in quarantine, I definitely had some weird like guilt built up with how unproductive I was being some weeks, just because I didn't know what was going on, and it was hard to plan when you don't know what's going on. But with that, a lot of that sort of confusion and energy I was able to put into song form. And the song I'm going to be sharing today is a song called Survival Kit. And I specifically wrote this song when keeping in mind just, again, that confusion, that kind of weird guilt that I know I wouldn't tell my friends to feel guilty about, but I was letting myself feel that way. Yeah, I'm just going to share the main chorus with you really quick, but the lyrics are, I don't want to let you down, but I'll admit right now, I'm not sure what's to come, but all I know is we are the first to live like this, and given no survival kit, I think it's okay if we don't know. So yeah, with that, the song is called Survival Kit, and that is why, because we weren't given one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, why don't you share that with us while you
Sure.
get your guitar? I just want to thank everybody for spending your morning with us. Please, find Edwina on social media. She's a brilliant artist. Any time I get to spend with her is a treat. And my encouragement for you is to get to know the stories of the young people around you, and to ask them what's happening for them in this moment, because it's a world we're building with and for them. So in your businesses and in your work, please include our youth, especially our BIPOC youth, in the conversation. And thanks for sharing today with me.
Thank you.
And here's your special treat, Survival Kit, an original song by Edwina written during the time of quarantine.
Yes. Yep. Thank you guys so much for having us. This is called Survival Kit. The word familiar feels unfamiliar, but I hope it doesn't stay that way. I feel cloudy like the weather, and so from holding my mind's weight, and I wonder if I'm supposed to have an answer today. But I still don't, I might never, but all I know, I say all I know is I don't want to let you down, no, but I'll admit right now, I don't know what's to come, but all I know is that we are the first to live like this, and given no survival kit, I think that it's okay if all I know is I don't think I'm supposed to, no. All I know is all I know that I'm overthinking, but I'm trying to take it day by day, break it 2 hours, even a minute. Who knew time could feel this way? And I wonder if I'm supposed to have an answer today. But I still don't, I might never. But all I know, I say all I know is I don't want to let you down, no. But I'll admit right now, I don't know what's to come. But all I know is that we are the first to live like this, and given no survival kit, I think that it's okay if all I know is I don't think I'm supposed to. All I know is I. And I wonder if I shoulda, and I wonder if I was supposed to look for more signs. And I wonder if I coulda, but I still can't, I might never. All I really know is that I don't wanna let you down, no. But I'll admit right now, I don't know what's to come. But all I know is that we are the first to live like this, and given no survival kit, I think that it's okay for all I know is I don't know. All I know is that we are the first to live like this, and given no survival kit, I think that it's okay for all I know is I don't. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was so beautiful. Thank you all for tuning in. We've got an exciting thing coming up for you next with Phamaly Theater. And thank you so much, Edwina, for spending your time with us this morning. Thanks, Denver Startup Week.
Oh my gosh, thank you
Yeah,
guys. That
thank you,
was
guys.
so awesome.
So
Thank you so
awesome.
much for kicking off the designer track with that amazing song. All right, next up we have Phamaly Theatre Company. Phamaly Theatre Company's mission is to be a creative home for theater artists with disabilities, to model a disability affirmative theatrical process, and to upend conventional narratives by transforming individuals, audiences, and the world. We're so excited to have Phamaly with us today, and so I'm going to pass it over to you, Reagan.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Jami and Edwina. Thank you so much for sharing some artistry. Always a delight to experience what other people are doing right now. So yeah, Phamaly Theatre Company. I'm Reagan Linton. I'm Artistic Director of Phamaly Theatre Company. A little bit about Phamaly. We were founded in 1989 by a group of artists, all whom had disabilities, but didn't feel like they were welcomed or able to access theater in Denver. So they formed their own company, and 31 years later, we now produce plays and musicals and original work featuring artists who have all different kinds of disabilities. And so we, as individual artists and as a company, we try to recontextualize the identity of disability, which is often mired in fear, in misunderstanding, and really frame it more as an identity of pride and productivity. So in this moment where there are very real threats happening in our world, we thought we'd have a short conversation with some of our very accomplished artists who have their own personal experiences with creating new narratives that uplift unconventionality, if that's a word, now it is, and disrupt narratives of fear. So I would like to introduce three of our extraordinary artists and invite them to talk about the way that they show up in the world, move through the world, or fit into the world. So we will start with Tuana Latrice Hill.
Hi, my name is Tuana Latrice Hill, and I am a writer and an actor. I am inner city born and raised, agnostic, Unitarian Universalist, Buddhist light, disabled, single, straight, 56-year-old, Princeton, Harvard, Regis educated, Russian speaking, liberal, female survivor who has seen too much and lived much more. I am a passionate woman who is dedicated to ending violence in all of its forms. I'm a diehard Broncos fan. I've been reading tarot cards since 1984. I've lived in Denver for 32 years. I'm a COVID survivor. I am currently writing my memoir titled They Hardly Ever Kiss You, and I share my life with my service dog, Roxy.
Thank you, Tuana, and I am humbled. Okay, great. Moving on to Toby Yount.
Hey, everybody. I'm Toby. I primarily do acting and comedy, specifically comedy writing, stand-up, and improv. I'm also in the process of trying to be a voiceover person. I like to think of myself as a fun little robot. That's how I like to think of my autism. And currently, just trying to do my best.
Thank you, Toby. And last but definitely not least, Maggie Whittam.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I am a stroke survivor at age 33. I've been an actor with Phamaly Theater for over 3 years, and I'm so grateful to the company for providing the opportunities that it does. I'm also making a documentary film about my life and stroke, disability, and resilience called The Great Now What?
Awesome. So I think the first question I'd like to pose to all of you is, as artists who live with what society would call disability, with hashtags around that, what is your feeling about how disability is storied? And what are the missteps or opportunities that exist for these conventional narratives to be transformed? So we'll start with Maggie.
So I feel like the story around disability too often is that we are portrayed, framed in a kind of way where we're objects of pity, that our lives are pathetic and sad and worthless. and or were portrayed in ways that were inspirational, mostly to another protagonist who is on their own journey, and we're there to teach them something or to make them feel better about their lives. And also there's this emerging story that's got some suspicion about people with disabilities, that somehow we're faking our illnesses or something ridiculous like that. So all of those stories are kind of destructive, and that's what's great about Phamaly, is that they, you know, they put disabled people out there in every other story that exists, and it's great. You know, it doesn't have to be explained in any sort of way. And the story in particular that I'm hoping is going to change it for people with disabilities is around employment and schooling, because people with disabilities have been pushed out of jobs, had to drop out of school because they needed accommodations, and they needed to work from home or study from home, and they were told that that wasn't possible. And so many people lost opportunities because of that. And now the pandemic shows us that, hey, everybody can study from home if necessary. A lot of people can work from home if necessary. So I hope that the story around disability and employment is going to change now.
Great. Yeah, it's definitely a moment we're in where we're thinking very differently about accommodation and what it is to transform spaces and transform work environments. Tuana, what about your thoughts?
One of the stories around disability that I think are really prevalent is that if you can't see the disability, if it's not very visibly present, then the person isn't disabled, or as Maggie said, they're faking it, or it's not real. My disabilities are, I live with a form of lupus. I also have post-traumatic stress disorder, and I live with dissociative identity disorder, all of which are pretty much invisible disabilities. And when people can't see it, you suffer from the "but you don't look sick" syndrome. People don't realize that you need accommodations. They don't take it very seriously when you request accommodations. And society tends to ignore your disability or to not give you the accommodations that you need. That's a story that really has to change, especially in light of the vast array of emotional and mental health disabilities that exist in our society.
Great, thank you. Toby, your thoughts?
So in stories in particular, for me personally, one of the big narratives in disability, particularly with autism, is that there is only one type of autism. You see it in many popular cultures, like it's the guy who's a math genius and is awkward but also unnecessarily mean, or unempathetic, that we are incapable of empathy. And it bothers me because since it's a spectrum, by definition, there's different people in all that, just like there's different people in everything. So I hope that changes as well. I also agree with Maggie and Tuana on the idea of, I hope changes is that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real, because I think that will help people realize that there's empathy and things that you need to do for that.
Great. I think my next query for all of you is that right now we are living in a moment where humans are facing very real, very unique threats of all kinds: health, economy, democracy, and at times fear seems to be a very overwhelming experience and a very overwhelming narrative. So I'm curious what your fears are in this moment and how you are perhaps restoring fear and or moving through your own experiences of fear, as we are all very isolated and going through something none of us have experienced before. So maybe we'll start out with Toby, your thoughts on that.
So one of my fears that's been going on since the pandemic is that we are going to pretend it didn't happen. That is a very big fear of mine, is that once we figure out how a vaccine and all of those steps that are necessary, that we're just going to try to brush it under the rug instead of actually looking at the infrastructure that put us in this and see how we can dismantle it slowly. what's helping me get past this fear is that I am seeing adaptability in ways that I've never seen before. And I think that shows that we are capable of adapting in many ways that goes beyond disability, goes beyond just who you are as a person. So I hope that sticks. So that has given me some hope.
Yeah, and I think we often talk as a disability community about how adaptation is one of our greatest skills that we develop as we are moving through a world that isn't necessarily built for us. And therefore, it's really something that you can gain from the experience of disability. Maggie, your thoughts about fears and how you're restoring or moving through?
Well, my fear is that the human race is not going to address the climate crisis in time. But I also feel like fear closes us down and doesn't allow us to open up and see the opportunities. And I had a stroke, and so everything changed in my life, and I had to, figure out how to remake my life. And there was a lot of fear there that I couldn't get back to the life that I wanted and had before. And I was desperate to return to that. And I would have done anything to return to that. But the reality is that I couldn't. And so I had a lot of fear about what was next. But I've been trying to open myself up and put that fear behind me, and that is hard, but it's like got to be a conscious thing that you put the fear back there and you look out on the horizon now. And so I see these parallels between my stroke and the pandemic, that we're so afraid that things won't go back to normal, and we want to get back to that normal so badly, but maybe we need to leave that normal behind us and explore what is ahead of us. Because maybe it's going to be great. Maybe we're going to address the climate crisis. Maybe we're going to have a more just and inclusive society. And the possibilities are out there. So let's try and embrace them.
Tuana, your thoughts on this?
Yes, I do. I identify as a COVID survivor, and I've actually spoken with other COVID survivors, and we're closeted. It's amazing how afraid people are of those of us who have had COVID and their own fears around getting COVID. I was like everyone else. The minute someone told me that they had COVID, the first question out of my mouth was, "Where did you get it?" I have been asked that question by almost everyone who finds out that I've had COVID, as if somehow that's going to protect them from getting COVID. It's out there. I don't know necessarily how I got COVID, but I got it. I lived with it. I survived it. A lot of us have. And then since I've had COVID, I have noticed that I've been treated differently by some people. People who wanted to be in physical proximity with me are now more afraid of me, even though I've already survived it. Even though there are questions around immunity, I've already had it and I came through it. I think there are reasons to be afraid of this illness, a lot of very, very good and valid reasons to be afraid of this illness, but there are real people living with COVID and real people who are afraid of living with COVID. And we still need to be treated with a generosity of spirit that I'm afraid is getting quashed a little bit in the fear. And so COVID survivors are very, very quiet about our status, almost as HIV survivors were in the beginning of AIDS and the HIV epidemic. And I don't really think that's warranted.
Great, thanks for that perspective. And I know I was one of those people who asked you, where did you get? Do you know where you got it? It's a good reframe for me of like, oh, maybe that's coming from my own experience of fear around it. So thank you for that. I know we want to make sure we have enough time for Linda to jump up here. So I'm going to jump right to, if particularly you're all artists who are working through or attempting to work through this unique moment of time where artistry is experiencing many different challenges, particularly the theater industry. So I'm just wondering, as artists, what does it mean to you to be crushing fear, uplifting authenticity and badassery? And how is that maybe impacting how you're thinking about seeing storytelling shift as we move forward out of, well, hopefully out of this current moment of all of these unique challenges. So maybe we'll start with Maggie.
Well, it's it's hard to crush fear, but that's what we're doing right now. We're doing Denver Startup Week virtually, and it's going to be awesome. You know, we just got to keep moving forward because life is going to throw whatever's going to happen is going to come at us, and we just got to deal with that. And I say let's stride into it bravely.
Great. Toby.
For me, just do small things. It's really easy to get caught up in how big COVID is, so you feel like, at least for me, in the fear that I have to do something equally as big to crush this fear. Now, you can break it in chunks. You don't have to do all of it. You can break the small goals, like write for 10 minutes, or do some vocal warm-ups, or whatever you wish to do with your artistry. You don't have to tackle the whole thing just because there's a big thing going on right now. And because if you try to do that, you'll always feel like you can't measure up when you're also trying to be safe.
Great. And Tuana.
Yeah, I love this question. That's a very, very interesting question. I know it's cliche to say feel the fear and do it anyway, but I think that's a lot of what we're talking about. I don't think you're going to necessarily make fear go away, or invalidate fear, or claim or say that it's not important. It motivates us to do a lot of things, including stay safe. But for example, as an actor, I've been on stage many, many times. People have seen me on stage. I've memorized my lines. I've prepared. And there's still that moment right before you go on stage where you get that feeling in your stomach and you get those feelings tingling in your nerves. And suddenly you're like, it's about to happen. And then you have to feel that experience and do it anyway. You don't get to stop and just go, I'm afraid, so I'm not going to do the show. You feel the fear, you do it anyway, and hopefully you create something transcendent and magical and mysterious and something that uplifts everyone who participates. And I have made a life out of trying to feel the fear and do it anyway. And whether or not you consider that bravery, courageous, or whether you just consider that moving through life and just taking care of business, whatever way you have to look at it, it's okay to be afraid. There's nothing wrong with being afraid, but get your bad self out there and do what you have to do. Be your biggest, broadest, most beautiful self and take up space in the world. Let us see you. Let us hear you. Be present. That's the greatest gift you can give anyone, is your presence. And so make sure that your presence is out there to be received.
Yeah, I've been reading a book recently that was talking about completing the stress cycle. And if we're not feeling and allowing those emotions to process and discharge, then we're never going to complete that stress cycle. So I appreciate that. And any final thoughts from any of you before we transition to our next great guest?
I think that we're having a major conversation about inclusivity right now in the US, and people who are often forgotten in the inclusivity discussion are people with disabilities. So let's have some more people with disabilities in our storytelling.
I would also say that I have a lot of identities, and a lot of them are fearful right now. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm living under an administration that makes me feel more afraid than I felt a few years ago. And my ability to be an artist, my ability to be an actor and a writer is what helps me not only survive, but to thrive. And I think there's an artist in all of us, and being able to access that is an incredibly powerful thing. And I encourage you to do that in whatever way you feel that you can, and to ride that wave and crest and move through it, move through life with passion.
Toby, any final thought?
Don't forget to be kind to yourself. This is a lot, and you can keep going, but some days you just need to relax and realize it's okay. It's okay to not do something. I know it feels like you should be productive all the time, but honestly, that will make you feel more guilty, and you don't need that. Just be kind to yourself and keep trying. You'll figure it out.
Great. Well, thank you all. I do want to just mention for anyone who's interested, particularly because we're not live in theater right now, Phamaly is hosting an online streaming webathon in the style of, or it's a kind of tongue-in-cheek version, homage to the Jerry Lewis telethon of years ago. That will be streaming live and free on YouTube on October 18th, and it will be featuring a number of our different performers in a variety of different acts. So we really invite you to join us for that. You can go to our website, www.phamaly.org with a PH, and get more information. So thank you to Denver Startup for having us, and I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you so much. So I like to think of fear as the other F word, fun. So I like to try to turn my fear into fun, but that was so amazing. Thank you so much.
Brian and I were saying, like, we wake up in fear every morning as well. So this is good to hear that perspective.
So our next part 3, we have Linda Klein. Linda Klein is one of the many business artists who started what is now Denver's exploding immersive arts movement. She has a sought after expertise in comedy, entertainment, experience design, and project midwifery. So Linda, we're bringing you up. We see you. Do you see us?
I see you. Yes. Thank you so much. What a fantastic panel to be a part of. I really think what we're all talking about here today is the power of story. And I want to talk about it in couching it a little bit a different context here. Let me share my screen. I'm going to talk about narrative infrastructure. It's a place where I've been kind of hanging out for a while. And my thought is load-bearing stories creating loyalty. Can it be true that story is actually what creates loyalty? So I have about 25 years experience in entertainment, and so 25 years of entertainment, and then I'm also sort of this business head, and I'm kind of analytical, and I do a lot of project management. And so there was this intersection that I kind of landed in a couple of years ago where those come together. And it was around story and business. And so let me talk a little bit about what I mean by narrative infrastructure. We'll define some terms here, okay? So like story, for me, story is a series of events and feelings that are shared. And there's a lot of talk about story in business and organization and causes and movements right now. And so those stories of your brand, those are important stories. But I'm talking about something a little bit different today. It's not the story of your brand or your business. It's the story your brand tells. It's the outward facing story. And narrative, people often ask, what's story, what's narrative? Story is a fixed thing. It's that series of events and feelings. Narrative is how you choose to tell the story. You might tell the beginning at the end or the end at the beginning. That's narrative. And then infrastructure is critical organizational support. And that's how I like using the word narrative and infrastructure together, because what if narrative could support your cause or your business in a way that would create loyalty? Because if narrative is, or if infrastructure is solid, when it's doing its job, it goes unnoticed. I think that's kind of the cool thing there. So could this be true? Here's my thoughts. It's a journey from narrative infrastructure or story down to loyalty. So we start with narrative infrastructure and we get to loyalty. I think loyalty is something we're all going after, whether we're in charge of a movement or a website, a platform, a business, a store, it doesn't matter, we're going for loyalty. So the things that connect those, we start with infrastructure, and what narrative infrastructure really is its core sense is just providing context and orientation for your patron, for your customer, for your participant, for your user. And then that offers deep hospitality. And hospitality is something we're all seeking. We'll talk about more in a second. And when there is deep hospitality, there's opportunity for co-creation and participation. And from there, we create a sense of belonging. And voila, we have affiliation, and that leads to loyalty. So that's how I'm thinking about things. I play in this sandbox of intersection of business and story. Had an opportunity to work on a project this past couple of years. And it's a bar that just opened earlier this year on Platt Street, right near downtown. And they 2 years ago, they came and they had a bit of a quandary. They had this brand new building, right? It was all steel and glass and didn't have much character. And they were looking to have a richer experience in their cocktail bar. And I suggested at the time, probably what they're looking for is a story, a load-bearing story or narrative infrastructure. And they wanted this place to be an homage to all women of Moxie. And we narrowed it down, like really what let's do is let's make it focused on a person. And the name of this person became Millie Parker. And I got the job of creating her biography. So I got to write this whole biography for a woman. She was born about the turn of the last century, and she had this really adventurous life. It was full of travels and lots of loves and lots of really great cocktails all over the world. And so this guiding document, her biography, actually informed all the processes of building out the cocktail bar, including the branding, the design, the build, the furnishings, the art, the food program, the beverage program, even the menu was all informed from the biography, and it gave everybody working on the project a common language. So that's a really straightforward example of narrative infrastructure and business intersecting. So if you take a look at the first two steps that I was suggesting, narrative infrastructure and context and orientation. So really, narrative is context. And I'll explain that a little bit simply. If we think about what we all love to know what the situation is, what our surroundings are, where we fit, what's going on. I mean, this is like total caveman brain stuff. And that's a caveman. I know it looks like Charlie Brown with a hangover, but I intended it to be a caveman. So because this is like survival stuff, we're like, where am I? What's going on? We want to be oriented, right? So story, the super, super simple stories provide context and orientation. We like recognizable patterns. Here's a great example of context and business intersecting very simply. Hey, I'm a customer, you're a proprietor, let's transact. That's like this super, super simple story or super, super simple context or orientation. It might get a little more complex and say, hey, I want to buy sporting goods, and hey, you sell sporting goods. So now there's this slightly, denser level of complexity. And the more dense the story, the infrastructure, the more dense the context and the orientation. And providing context and orientation, I mean, honestly, all it really is an act of hospitality. I use the word deep hospitality here only because I'm talking about hospitality for the unconscious mind, not necessarily the conscious person. So just as a little thought experiment, think about your brand, your business, your platform, your store, your cause, your movement as the host of a party. Okay, and what does a host do? Host greets you, right? They bring you in and they say, oh, here's where you can put your coat, and oh, that beautiful pan of vegetables that you brought to the party. Please set them on the table. They tell you where to put that. Although I'd much prefer if it was like chips, like when you host a party, like you really don't want leftover vegetables, you want leftover chips and dip. But anyway, I digress. So they tell you where to put that and where to put that. And they say, oh, you know what? Oh, at 9 o'clock, we're going to cut the cake. So now you have context and orientation. You kind of know where your place is. And then a good host will connect you with the event. And they say, oh, look, there's Jean and Jackie. You know what? I know they like to fly fish too. I bet you guys have been to some of the same places. And they connect you with the event. So you have context, you have orientation, you have connection. I think that it's basically finding where you fit. A good host or your brand or your business or your cause shows you where you fit in the event. And a great example of this is that is not a potato with a handle. That's what my husband thought. No, that's a curling stone, because a good example is curling. It's a sport where you slide the rock across the ice and you score points. Well, there's always that person out in front of the stone, like sweeping really hard. And I always thought, I always thought they were out there just kind of clearing debris off the ice. Well, no, I found out later they're sweeping, scrubbing so hard, they're actually melting a tiny, tiny layer of the ice. So that stone just glides right where they want it to go. So it can't help but just be drawn into the path because they've created that really slick, kind of imperceptible river of water. And I think, does this make sense to you, that we are just subconsciously drawn to the deepest hospitality, where we can be super comfortable and we know where we fit in? And when we're super comfy and we know our role, that is when we engage with co-creation and participation. So we're no longer outside the party, we are of the party. We're in the party and we are creating the party. We are part of the creation of the party. And your customer and your user is now helping to create who you are as a business, because you've given them space and context to do that. So we shift from telling people, if you were a business, let's say, or maybe you wrote some software, or you have an app. If you go from telling your story, telling people about yourself, to asking them, like we spend all this time, like, this is what you should notice about us. This is what you should notice about. This is what you should notice about us. And then what happens when you shift it to, what do you notice about us? All of a sudden, your participant, your user, your customer, your patron is participating in that, and that's conversational. And you can shift from this is who we are, to who do you think we are, and who could we be together? Less periods, more question marks. Yes, that is a period, just so you know. It looked like a planet all there by itself. So less periods, more question marks will create co-creation and participation from your users and your customers, your patrons. And so here, I'm going to give you an example of us loving this process. We do this unconsciously. We don't even know it. That we make these connections when we are given a gap to participate and co-create. We cannot help but do it. So here's a little guy, right? And yeah, I will just let you discern what he's doing. Perhaps he's reading. I don't know. And I'm going to show you another image, and you will have to connect the two. You cannot help it. Your brain's going to go there. Just watch. Oh, great. So it was just a guy sitting there reading earlier. Now there's like a fish. So what was he reading? Is it fish dead? Is he reading a CPR manual? We don't know. It could be. It's probably a cookbook. Could be. Fish is dead, ready to eat. But we can't help but fill that gap. And we love filling these gaps. So you should always leave something to be discovered. These don't fill it all in. Don't tell everybody everything. Ask them more questions. Can you follow where I'm going with this? We want to discover. We want to fill in manageable gaps. Like here's kind of how I see it. Like let's say your story is the bumpy lines, the mountain, right? And then that you see how it's all dense at the bottom. That's your infrastructure. It's a really good dense story. And there's a platform where all your users, your customers, your patrons will stand on that part. And those little bumps that come up the top, that's the narrative. That's where the narrative shines through. And you've left gaps for people to connect the dots, and you leave room for them to discover. Like if you have a murder mystery movie, you're not gonna like tell who did it right at the beginning, because then the movie watcher's like, well, why am I here? I got nothing left to discover. This is boring. Because discovery equals connections. That's how we like to connect the things together. And here's where it gets really gooey, is when we connect, we get to belonging. And belonging is because I changed the outcome. I changed the outcome of the party. I changed the outcome of the company. I changed the outcome of the movement because I was involved. And that goes back to like caveman brain stuff. Like read anything by Brene Brown about belonging, and you'll realize it's like basically we want water, food, shelter, and belonging. And belonging really clears the way for knowing that it matters that you're here. It doesn't matter that someone's here. It doesn't matter that someone's participating. It matters that you are participating. And that leads us to affiliation. And I looked up the root for affiliation, and it was adopted family. So you move from something like, oh, I like this cause, I like this movement, I like this business, to I am. And Apple is a great example of this. I know it's an overused example, but it's a great one, so I'm going to use it. It's like some people might say, I like Apple products. And then when they affiliate, it becomes, I'm an Apple person. You see how it changes? It becomes a part of how you define yourself. And that brings us to loyalty. Loyalty is a deep love. And it's so deep, it can be resistant to rational thought. And it comes with a lot of inertia, which is a great place. We want to bring people to loyalty for our causes, for our businesses, for our brands. So how'd I do? How's the map? Narrative infrastructure is basically context and orientation, creates deep hospitality, co-creation, participation, creates belonging, affiliation, and then we landed at loyalty. So let me just tell you a little bit about Millie. So this is one of the interior shots of Room for Millie. And when you go, and you should go, because they have offered everybody participating today a 2-for-1 coupon, which I'll show in a little bit and you can take a picture of. When you go, you'll realize the story that I spent so much time writing 2 years ago is never told at Millie. You can't see the story. But what you can see is the narrative popping up everywhere. And there's these gaps that we can't help but fill in. And it makes us know that there's a richness to the place, that everything there belongs. And the creators of Room for Millie also mentioned that having that story structure made the creation of the place, the entire 2 years of build out and all those decisions, much more easy and efficient, because the narrative I had already made decisions for them. And a review in the Denver Post mentioned that Room for Millie was more like a work of art. And I think I know why they say that is because art invites you in. Art needs interpretation. Art needs participation. So I think that's kind of where that came from. So it's important when it matters that you're here. So narrative infrastructure. I think maybe it's a road to loyalty, and some questions to think about for your business, your brand, your cause. What stories does your business or brand tell? Where are your gaps for co-creation? And when and where do you offer deep hospitality? I would so be into geeking out with anybody about this kind of stuff, and tell me what I missed. Tell me what you see. So let's be in touch and let's talk story. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thanks
much,
so much,
Linda.
you guys. That was awesome. Thanks, Linda.
I'm gonna stop sharing first, hopefully.
And now we have, we are going to be announcing our winner of the giveaway. So drum roll.
And the winner is Amy Geese. I hope I'm saying the last name right, for her Twitter post. She actually made a couple and included a photo. That was awesome. Thank you. And I think everyone who attended this session gets 2-for-1 drinks one time at Room for Millie. Is that true?
Yep, that's true.
Okay. What do they do to get that?
They go and they just say that they attended this session, right, Linda?
Is that true?
Sure.
Yeah. Actually, I think we have a coupon, don't we?
We do.
Okay.
I can screen share that, and everybody can take a picture of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, let's do that.
Did you draw it like your other?
No.
Show us the coupon, Linda.
I will. Here we go.
Yeah, everybody
There it
Everyone get
is.
Ah, there's the coupon.
Yeah,
Everyone get
get
out their
their
cameras. Yes.
camera.
All right.
All right.
Yes. Beautiful. Amazing.
And just real quick, next session is at 1:30, Be a Braver Creative with Milan Klusacek from the Denver Broncos sidelines. And then be sure to attend the game show. We really want everybody to check it out. It's interactive, it's fun. 6:05, no later than 6:05 tonight. It's on the main schedule, the opening party. And then the clubhouse. And then if you guys want to hear more from me and Brian, tune in on Thursday from 12 to 1. You can ask us anything in the world, like how did Brian get his hair like this? Anything you can ask us. So lots of fun stuff this week. Check it out, share it.
Yeah, well, let's bring all of our panelists back up onto
bow.
the screen here.
Like for an encore bow.
Yes. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much for lending all of your talents to Denver Startup Week. We couldn't do this without the community. So thank you so much for participating.
Thanks for having us, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys. It was awesome. That was a great way to start for us. Thanks.
Yeah, our very
Bye.
first virtual
Check out
session.
Edwina's music online, folks.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Bye.